Hello, everyone. I will be presenting our article for this week. It is called Measuring Principal Performance, How Rigorous Are Commonly Used Principal Performance Assessment Instruments. So, measuring principal performance, how rigorous are commonly used principal performance assessment instruments. It was conducted by Christopher Condon and Matthew Clifford. Assessing school principal performance is necessary and challenging. Principals are second only to classroom teachers as the most influential school factor in student achievement. Types of assessment, formative and summative. Well, what's the difference? Summative assessments tend to inform a decision about the person taking the assessment's competence. For example, the Georgia milestones at the end of the year that students are going to take this year. That's a summative assessment. Formative assessment is also a measure of competence, but results are used to inform future actions. So, like the tests that take along the way that the teachers give them to get to the Georgia milestones would be an example of a formative assessment. Purpose of this review and article. Principals should have standards to be assessed by, just like students and teachers have. This article addresses the importance of standards-based measures, the need for establishing reliability and validity in those measures, measures that are more widely accepted and psychometrically sound, and these measures are intended to evaluate principal performance and have varying degrees of publicly available evidence of psychometrically testing. Inform decision makers' selection of job performance instruments used for hiring, performance instruments, and tenure decisions. School principals are being asked to ensure that all students have access to a high-quality instruction and all teachers are held accountable for student learning. There are new standards for principal performance. The Educational Leadership Policy Standards, which is also called ISLLC, are a widely recognized and referenced principal standards list. There are 6 domains. Setting a widely shared vision for learning, developing a school cultural and instructional program conducive to student learning and staff professional growth, ensuring effective management of the organization, operation, and resources for a safe, efficient, and effective learning environment, collaborating with faculty and community members responding to diverse community interests and needs, and mobilizing community resources, acting with integrity, fairness, and in an ethical manner, understanding, responding to, and influencing the political, social, legal, and cultural context. Principals must work within a well-formed ethical code to oversee instructional quality, develop teacher talents, establish a learning culture in schools, and work within and beyond the school to secure financial, human, and political capital to maintain and advance organizational operations. We have to measure the reliability and the validity of each assessment, and the article talks about what reliability is. It measures the consistency and stability of the assessment. A measure of reliability when the responses are consistent and stable for each individual who take the test. So if all factors remain the same, then the test taker should make relatively the same score. Validity assessments are considered valid when they measure what they are intended to measure. The article talks about 2 different kinds: content validity, which is established by ensuring that the test items under consideration measure all of the dimensions or facts of a given standard, like principal performance. Content validity can be established by aligning the test or other items to a set of standards or practices such as leadership effectiveness. Construct validity is determined by the degree to which test items measure a construct or standard, which is the element that the items meaning to assess. A construct may be any standard. The Learning Point Associates, which is who the two authors work for, conducted a search on Google Scholar to locate school principal performance assessment instruments. When they did so, they ended up with 5,000 original articles. Out of the 5,000, 20 met the criteria that we're going to discuss in a few minutes. Articles that did not have any documentation were omitted, and the articles that they did choose had to report that the assessment was intended for use as a performance assessment, psychometrically tested for reliability and validity, and psychometrically sound means that the instrument must be tested for validity and reliability using accepted testing measures, and it must be publicly available for purchase. A minimum reliability rating of 0.75 must have been achieved, as well as content or construct validity must have occurred. There are 8 assessments that the article discusses. The first one is Vandenberg developed it in 1988. It's called the Change Facilitator Style Questionnaire. It was intended to measure the extent to which leaders can facilitate change. It was a questionnaire, 77-item assessment that addresses 6 domains. There are 3 clusters, and each cluster has 2 scales. Cluster 1 was concern for people. Cluster 2 was organizational efficiency. Cluster 3 was strategic sense. As you can see on the chart, the content and construct validity that they used during this assessment is based on the content validity is based on extensive literature review and focus group study used in development. Construct validity is established through empirical validation using confirmatory factor analysis. The reliability, according to the subscale coefficient alphas range from 0.64 to 0.95. Anything that scored below is 0.8 was giving the score of poor. Moving on to the diagnostic assessment of school and principal effectiveness. Eberheimer developed it in 1992 to measure and identify the strengths of schools and their leaders so that school improvement plans and principal professional development goals would be better informed. The measure indicates how these groups view themselves, school leadership, and school performance. It was a 360-degree evaluation focusing on educational leadership. 213-item survey independently completed by students, teachers, principals, and others. It takes about 30 to 40 minutes, and it received a moderate reliability because it scored a 0.8 to a 0.97. The next one is the Instructional Activity Questionnaire. Larson developed this in 1987 as a performance assessment tool that specifically addresses instructional leadership aspects of principals' work. The measure was developed through the extensive review of the school principal effectiveness literature. It is a 34-item assessment. It covers 3 subscales that specifically address instructional leadership only. It received a reliability measure of moderate because it ranged from 0.7 to 0.9, and the average of that would be 0.8. So that's why it received a moderate score. All right. The next assessment is called Leadership Practices Inventory. They developed this in 2002. They extensively interviewed and surveyed leaders, including principals, to identify best leadership practices. They found leadership practice inventory domains are as follows: 1, modeling the way; 2, inspiring a shared vision; 3, challenging the process. 4, enabling others to act. And 5, encouraging the heart. It is a 30-item measure of general leadership practices to be completed by the principal and an observer or supervisor. And it received a poor reliability because it scored a 0.79. The next one is called the Performance Review Analysis and Improvement System for Education, PRAISE for short. This assessment system was developed through an extensive review of school administrator effectiveness literature. PRAISE domains are not specifically aligned with professional standards. The domains that PRAISE assesses are problem solving, relations with teachers, and professional qualities of competencies. It received a moderate reliability scale, and the coefficient ranges from 0.88 to 0.98. The Principal Instructional Management Rating Scale, the PIMRS rating scale, it is used to determine the degree to which principals serve as instructional managers. PIMRS focuses on several constructs, including the dedicated use of time for improving instruction, coordinating curriculum, and evaluating instruction. It is a 71-item questionnaire that addresses 11 educational leadership subskills. This is widely used in the field of education, but it received a poor reliability scale because it scored a 0.75. The last two that we are going to talk about are principal profile. The principal profile was developed through extensive interview and consultation with principals, teachers, superintendents, and department heads. The two key assumptions inform the tool are student growth should be the benchmark for school leadership effectiveness and a factor in performance evaluation. And 2, school leader effectiveness is marked by consistency of actions. It only takes about 15 to 20 minutes, and it received a poor reliability because of the inter-rater agreement form, which is and the score was 0.5. The last assessment that we are going to go over is Vanderbilt Assessment of Leadership in Education. VAL-ED for short, was developed in 2006 and has become one of the most widely used and respected measures of school leadership performance assessment. VAL-ED assesses principal performance by gathering information from principals, teachers, and principal supervisors. It is a 360-degree assessment tool to be administered to principals, teachers, and principal supervisors. It consists of about 72 items, and they take those items and produce a quantitative, which is numbers, diagnostic profile. This one is linked directly to the ISLC standards that I went over at the beginning of the presentation. Its reliability came back high with a 0.98 score. The findings from this article, out of the 20 assessments, only 8 met the criteria for the rigor. 2 out of the 8 were created in the last decade. All others were created 10 to 20 years ago. Due to the emphasis on instructional leadership, database decision-making, community involvement, and other well-documented changes to the school principal position in the last 10 years, it is possible that older measures do not capture the essential features of the position. Few assessments are being made for public review. Each assessment measures different roles that the principal must carry out. Different data collection approaches. Each assessment collects different kind of data. Data from the assessments will only achieve the desired results if the principal and the supervisor view the data and give weight to the results during their evaluations. The relevance to the reading that we had this week, which is Chapter 6, the main relevance that I found was the criteria for good measuring instruments. The two criteria are reliability and validity. Reliability is a degree to which a test consistently measures whatever it is measuring. So just like being a reliable person, meaning people can depend on you, it is the same thing in assessment. There are 5 different types of reliability. The first one is stability, which is test and retest. Stability is the degree to which scores on the same test are consistent over time. Test one group, then test another group, then correlate the scores. The next one is equivalence, which is the degree to which 2 similar forms of tests produce similar scores from a single group of test takers. Give the same group of test takers 2 different tests that measure the same content, and then correlate those scores, evaluate those scores, and see what you come up with. The third one is the combination of the first 2, equivalence and stability combination. In order to test this reliability, you have to give one group of test takers a test, then wait a while and give the same group the different test, correlate those scores, and see what you come up with. Internal consistency is the extent to which the items in a test are similar to one another in content. This type of internal consistency reliability is split half reliability, and that involves splitting one test into 2 halves. So usually like all the even numbers or all the odd numbers, getting the test from those halves and then correlating those scores. Score and rater reliability involves a lot of interviewing assessments because it's very subjective to whatever the scorer or interviewer feels like. It involves 2 different types. It's inter-judge, which refers to the consistency of 2 or more independent scorers, raters, or observers, and intra-judge, which refers to the consistency of one individual scoring, rating, and observing over time. Validity, just like reliability is reliable, validity is the test valid. Validity refers to the degree to which a test measures what it is supposed to measure and consequently permits appropriate interpretation of scores. 4 different types of validity. Content validity is the degree to which a test measures an intended content area and includes item validity, which is concerned with whether the items are relevant to the measurement of the intended content area, and sampling validity, which is concerned with how well a test samples the total content area being tested. The purpose of this type of validity is to what extent does this test represent the general domain of interest. Criterion-related validity is determined by relating performance on a test to performance on a second test or other measure. The purpose of this is to what extent does the test correlate highly with another test. Concurrent validity is the degree to which scores on one test are related to scores on a similar pre-existing test administered in the same time frame or to some other valid measure available at the same time. The purpose of the concurrent validity is to what extent does the test reflect the construct it is intended to measure. Consequential validity is the most important form of validity because it asks the fundamental validity question: what is the test really measuring? The purpose of this type of validity is to what extent does the test create harmful consequences for the test taker. That's what most of the article discussed about the reliability and the validity of each of the 8 assessments that they covered. So that was what was relevant to me in the chapter reading as well. Thank you for tuning in. And here is the reference for the article that we had to read. Thank you.